Ramsey has coming his way this season, which is a complicating factor, as could be the Packers' release today of cornerback Jaire Alexander, who's a younger and now cheaper option than Jalen Ramsey. Maybe interested teams could look that way instead. Alexander, still just 28 years old, but he's missed at least 10 games due to injury in 3 of the past 4 seasons. The Packers just deciding that they just haven't been able to count on him being available to them, so they move on at cornerback post Jaire Alexander.
I mean, to that end, Jaire Alexander has seen a significant dip in production, but he's also struggled to stay on the field, playing in 14 of 34 games over those last 2 seasons. Graz referencing that. It's a stark contrast to his first 5 seasons in the league, where he was a top 3 defender in terms of pass breakups. The last 2 seasons, though, he ranks 126. And how about this? The Packers have now made it official, releasing Jaire Alexander after 7 seasons in Green Bay, posting a thank you, Jaire, to him on X. But Field, is Jaire Alexander an instant impact for a team out there? I realize health, age, I don't know, maybe it all matters here, but he is only 29.
I think people hear the name Jaire Alexander, Laura, and they go, all right, let me Google how much cap space my team has left right now. Can I go out there and afford this former All-Pro player at a really important position? Then you kind of look under the hood a little bit and you ask yourself, what kind of player is Jaire Alexander viewed as around the NFL now in the open market? You guys mentioned the 14 games over the past 2 seasons, which means 20 missed. Go 2 more years back, 34 of the past 68 games. He's just as likely as he is unlikely to be on the field. On top of that, last year was a very bizarre injury situation. Matt LaFleur seemed like he was beaten down by answering the same questions over and over again. It seemed like Jaire was getting closer and closer to returning, and then, boom, no Jaire Alexander comes Sunday. I think the market, when he does sign, there will be one, and he could sign very quickly. I think you hear the name Jaire Alexander and you expect, again, how much is it going to take? Might be a lot more modest than people currently are forecasting for a player that just a couple of years ago or 3 years ago looked like one of the game's best defensive players.
Yeah, listen, there's no question that he can play. He's just not available. And we know your best ability is your availability. And that's the case with Jaire Alexander missing all these games with the Green Bay Packers. If you can't depend on a player, then obviously you got to move on from the guy. So listen, the guy, no question about it, is still a reputable cornerback. He can still go out there and make plays, but he has to somehow, some way overcome this injury bug that's plagued him over the past, 3 or 4 seasons with him?
Yeah, I mean, Mina, Field referenced that maybe this market's going to be a little bit lighter for Jaire than we would expect, but are there some teams that you think should be going after him maybe a little more aggressively?
Definitely, especially because I'm agreeing with Field. I think it will be a modest contract. I think Jaire Alexander, by the way, should see this as an opportunity to rebuild his own value. 1 year prove-it type deal, remind the NFL what he's capable of on a playoff team. And it's the playoff teams that I'm eyeballing who have need for maybe not even a starting cornerback depth, but in some cases, I think if he's healthy, certainly be a starting cornerback. I'll point to the Los Angeles Rams. The Baltimore Ravens come to mind. In the NFC North, the Minnesota Vikings, I think, could also. I thought they might add another corner, and they didn't this year. All 3 of those teams, Laura, are legitimate contenders, and all 3, I think, would benefit from the presence of Alexander.
I like those.
You know what's interesting right now for Jaire? This is uncharted territory. He was drafted and extended by the Packers. There are certain guys who, they either reach this stage of their career or when they get there multiple times throughout their career, are actually at their best when they're playing for something bigger, right? Yeah. So, again, I think the number is going to surprise people when they hear Jaire Alexander. Maybe it's a $4 or $5 million base value for Alexander. Maybe it's a 1-year deal like Mina said. But now he understands, I'm not on this contract that pays you $20 million per year like he just was with Green Bay. It's, if I don't play well this year, then how many more bites of the apple am I going to get significantly? So the 1-year deal probably stings a little bit right now and probably wanted to stay in Green Bay on a restructured contract, but it gives him an opportunity, as Mina laid out, to potentially, a year from now, feel and look a lot more like Jaire Alexander in March than he was this past season.
Still so much time. And the other thing, too, is the chance to maybe win a Super Bowl. I mean, some of the teams that Mina named, they're right in contention to do so, we would think, at least at this point. All right, coming up, the Chiefs
this team is happy to be done with the hypotheticals and be moving into a concrete reality that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Will this team be better? Have they gotten better in the quarterback room? Will they contend for that championship that Pittsburgh Steelers people and fans and organization think is the standard?
It might be the best option for Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh might be the best option for Rodgers. These two entities need each other.
Now, Aaron Rodgers is signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
We start with you. What do you think is key to this new offense working out?
Yeah, Laura, first of all, I'm so fascinated to see the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith, to see how that whole dynamic worked. But for me, the most important aspect is the offensive line. You know where I was going to go with that. This Pittsburgh Steelers organization has invested heavily on the offensive line. You know, in 23 and the 24 draft, I mean, that's literally four out of their 5 starters came from those 2 drafts respectively. So they need that unit to come together. They didn't play all that well last year. They need that unit to come together because we know Aaron Rodgers is no longer a spring chicken at 41 years old.
Spring chicken.
Damian, I'm interested in the relationship between not just Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith, but also Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf for a couple of reasons. This is not a deep wide receiver group behind him. They need DK to be the number 1 receiver that they traded for. And he's an interesting pairing with Rodgers. There's aspects that I think work. Last year you saw Rodgers still has the arm talent to throw deep outside the numbers where DK is at his best. But then there's aspects of it that make me a little bit nervous. I think in Seattle there was some frustration at times with DK's lack of nuance and timing in the route running. And I don't know if y'all have watched Aaron Rodgers when his receivers aren't in the right place at the right time, but it's not always a happy situation. So I think that's something that I'm going to be focused in on to see how it works out.
Yeah, Mina, Mike Williams is going to join us tomorrow on NFL Live for more on the dynamic you just described. Listen, here's what I'll say. The move that the Steelers made to sign Aaron Rodgers at that cost is a perfectly reasonable investment. Under $14 million in base value is really, by NFL quarterback standards, close to the bottom of veteran contracts. That being said, I don't want to confuse activity with achievement this offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ryan Clark was talking about it. You heard it in that voiceover to begin this segment. This is a team that, what are they going to do every single year under Mike Tomlin? Have at least a 500 record. That's not the bar. The bar is whether this team can win meaningful football games in January, which they have not done in nearly a decade. I think Aaron Rodgers was the Steelers' best available option. I have no issue with the cost. I think he'll be better than he was last year. I think he will be a little bit re-energized. I think this team's the 3rd best team in its own division. And that, to me, is where I think the Pittsburgh Steelers' most important bottom line is, Laura. Yeah, they might win 8 or 9 games this year, but no, I don't think they're going to Kansas City or Buffalo and winning in January.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what every Steelers fan is like, all right, how do we get over this hump? But the other thing here, Graz, is the timeline. I think people get frustrated when we're just talking like the wait for Aaron Rodgers, but the reality is they are behind the 8 ball here. How does Arthur Smith plan to manage the late addition? You see this becoming a thing down the road.
Yeah, look, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old. Any player, when they first arrive, is going to need some level of ramp-up period. He's probably not going to be as active in the mini camp as he would have been if he'd been there all off season, but that's okay. They've been in contact with Aaron Rodgers. Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers have had conversations over the previous several weeks about the offense, what it would look like if Aaron did end up signing there. So they've laid a lot of that groundwork already. Arthur Smith has 2 guys in the league that he worked with in Tennessee, Matt LaFleur, who was Rodgers' head coach in Green Bay at the end, and Todd Downing, who was the Jets quarterbacks coach the last couple of years. So he's talked to those guys about what Rodgers is like, what he likes, what he doesn't. So they've been preparing for his arrival. And even if you don't see like the full Aaron Rodgers experience in minicamp, I think they'll have him ready to go by the time training camp rolls around.
It all makes sense, and he's no stranger to getting ready to go, right? You just think about the other players in the offense and how that all marries together. Let's get into some more top stories with Graz. Let's start with some of the news coming out of Houston. What more can you tell us?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Nick Chubb, the running back, is in Houston today, taking a physical, expected to sign if all goes well, which it sounds like it is at this point going well. So he will add to that backfield along with Joe Mixon as the Texans try and, get the offense back to where it was in C.J. Stroud's first season after a little bit of a step back offensively last season. Jalen Ramsey of the Dolphins. The Dolphins have been very clear that Jalen Ramsey is likely to not be on their team this year. They have been talking trade with various teams. I think there's a belief that Jalen Ramsey will get traded. When and to whom remain questions. The acquiring team likely would have to pick up at least